Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl, and it is Wednesday of Super Bowl week, and this is going to be the next in my series of videos I'm doing this week leading up to the Super Bowl. And today and tomorrow's videos are going to sort of go together because today we're going to focus on the bad, tomorrow we're going to focus on the good. Today's video is called Reasons the Eagles Will Lose the Super Bowl. Don't worry, tomorrow I'll be going over reasons why the Eagles will win the Super Bowl, but I want to look at some of the things that could become problematic for the Eagles in this game. And the first one is just going to be flat out experience, both experience as it relates to games as a whole and experience in the Super Bowl. Specifically, when I'm thinking of games as a whole, I'm thinking about the shirt that I have on. We're playing our backup quarterback. Remember that. Wentz is not going to be playing in this game. And although Foles has probably just as many games, if not more, in terms of his NFL career, clearly in terms of the last couple of years, Carson Wentz has played a lot more football than Nick Foles has. And Nick Foles looked great against the Vikings, but it is a little bit problematic for the Eagles. They're playing this game with their backup quarterback, and that's a problem. The other big problem, though, with experience happens to be the fact of experience in the big game itself. The one stat that everyone I know has talked about that sort of really pops out at you is Tom Brady has already played in 7 Super Bowls. The Eagles on their current roster have 7 guys who have played in Super Bowls. One of those guys is on IR, but one of the guys that has played in a Super Bowl has played in 2 of them. So you've got 8 Super Bowl appearances between 7 guys, or if you're looking about guys who will actually play in the game, you've got 7 Super Bowl appearances by 6 guys. What's the one good thing to come out of that? In all of those instances, the guys won their games. Specifically, if you're looking at it in chronological order, Malcolm Jenkins played in Super Bowl 44 for the Saints, which they won. Fast forward to Super Bowl 47, when the Ravens beat the 49ers, and 3 of the guys that were on that Ravens teams are on the Eagles: Torrey Smith, Donnell Ellerbe, and Corey Graham. So all 3 of those guys are also on the Eagles, were on that Ravens team, and of course that Ravens team won that game. Go forward one more year to Super Bowl 48, and you get Chris Maragos, who played with the Seahawks in their big Super Bowl win over the Denver Broncos. Chris Maragos, of course, is on the injured reserve list, so he's the one guy that's on the Eagles roster, but that obviously will not be playing in the Super Bowl. And you go forward one more year to Super Bowl 49 when the Patriots beat the Seahawks, and who was on that Patriots team? LeGarrette Blount was on that Super Bowl Patriots team. 2 years after that, Super Bowl 51, LeGarrette Blount's on the Super Bowl team again when the Patriots beat the Falcons, and so is Chris Long. So LeGarrette Blount has 2 Super Bowl wins with the Patriots. Chris Long has 1. So there's a lot of guys on the team that do have experience in the big game and have experience winning the big game. So while it's not a huge problem, I think, for the Eagles in terms of their experience, you do have to remember that the Patriots have a lot more experience in this game, especially as it relates to their quarterback and especially as it relates to their coaching staff. But there are some Eagles players that have been there, have won, and know what it takes to win that game. So hopefully they'll be able to really help some of the guys that play around them really sort of be able to focus on the game and really play at the top of their game. Another potential problem for the Eagles is the coaching matchup. I've really sung a lot of praises for Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz this year. I think they've done a really good job. But Bill Belichick is probably one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach of all time in the NFL. A stat that really popped out at me also in looking at this, Brady and Belichick, in the course of their careers together, in playoff games that they are playing against a team that they didn't play in the regular season. So that's what you have this year. They're playing the Eagles where they didn't play the Eagles in the regular season. The Patriots are 15-0 against teams that they did not play in the regular season. That's a huge deal. It just goes to show how well they are at usually out-preparing the other team. The other team really does not know exactly how they're going to play against them. Belichick will game plan specific for every team. So until you really see what he's going to do, you don't know exactly the tack he's going to take on your team. So it's difficult to sometimes really expect what that's going to be. And that's one of the reasons why I think that stat is where it is. Now, one interesting thing about that stat, they are a tuck rule away from that stat actually being 13-1. Everyone remembers the tuck rule game against the Oakland Raiders in that snowstorm, where the question was it an incomplete pass or was it a fumble? Anyone who watches football on a regular basis would have said that it was a fumble, but by rule, it technically was an incomplete pass. If that tuck rule does not exist, they lose that game, they're 13-1, and then the next week they beat the Patriots. So you actually they beat the Steelers in the next game, who they actually did not play in that regular season. So you take 2 wins off and you add a loss to take 15-0 down to 13-1. I've been singing a lot of the praises of Jim Schwartz, but you have to look at the history that Jim Schwartz has up against Bill Belichick, and it's not that great. In fact, if you look at the history of Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator and head coach against Bill Belichick, really the last time that he was able to beat a Bill Belichick team in a meaningful game was in 2002. When he was a defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, and they beat the Patriots 24-7. After that 2002 game, you then have 5 straight games where Belichick and Schwartz match up against each other, where Belichick gets the better side of it. 3 more times were the Patriots beating the Titans, and then you've got 1 game where Jim Schwartz was the head coach of the Detroit Lions, and the Patriots beat the Lions in that instance. And then, of course, Jim Schwartz goes to the Buffalo Bills as their defensive coordinator, and there's 1 more win then where the Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills. There was 1 game after that, the most recent game where they coached against each other, where Jim Schwartz beat Bill Belichick, but it was in a meaningful game because it was week 17 when the Patriots didn't play a lot of their starters in that game. All in all, though, then if you look back at it, then the last 5 meaningful games, Belichick is 5-0 against Jim Schwartz, including 1 playoff game. Talking about experience, though, you've also got to look at Brady in general, and after last year's Super Bowl, I called him the greatest of all time, taking over for Montana, who I had as number 1 for the longest time. But after that comeback last year in the Super Bowl, you had to put Brady up at number 1. So the question is, do you really want to go up against the greatest of all time, where after what he did to the Falcons last year, is any lead safe against him? So that's got to be a concern going into this game. And do you really want to test the greatest of all time? That's a major reason why the Eagles could end up losing this game. There was another stat that I saw that really is concerning as well, and that is teams that won conference championship games by 30 or more points, which is what the Eagles did against the Vikings. When they got to the Super Bowl, then they are 2-6 is their record. So teams that blow out teams in the conference championship game tend to not perform real well in the Super Bowl. That's exactly where the Eagles are. In many ways, it reminds me of last year when the Eagles played against the Steelers early in the season, played about as good as they could have, then had that bye week, and I think that bye week really sort of killed their momentum, and I really think that's could potentially happen here. If there was ever a time where I wish the NFL did not have a bye week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, it was this time, because the Eagles were firing on all cylinders. I think the bye week probably hurts them more than it hurts the Patriots. The Patriots are only going to use that bye week to get more healthy. It allows Gronkowski to overcome his concussion. It gives Brady more time to heal his hand and the stitches that he has there. So all in all, I think the bye week really hurts the Eagles more than it does the Patriots. And like I said, it sort of reminds me of that. And then the Eagles came out and laid a clunker against the Lions. If you recall, in that first half against the Lions, they looked terrible. Fast forward to this season. We looked great against the Broncos in that game against the Broncos and just absolutely blew them out. We then have a week off for our bye week, come back the next week against the Cowboys and look really sort of lackadaisical in that first half against the Cowboys. We then came out in the second half and blew the Cowboys out, but that first half really looked bad. If we come out in the Super Bowl and do that, like we've done the last 2 years off of bye weeks in the Doug Peterson era, if we look really sort of lackadaisical and do not come out with our best effort in the first half, it might already be too far out of reach for us to make a comeback in the second half when you're going up against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. So that's another sort of concern I have, is the bye week, us coming off the bye week, us coming off the big blowout win. It really could be potentially become a problem for the Eagles. So those are my reasons why I think the Eagles could end up losing this game. Leave your comments below. Are there anything you think I'm missing of reasons why this really could become a problem for the Eagles, and that we are in a good position to or a bad position to potentially lose this game? Leave them in the comments below. Like I said, I promise tomorrow I'll be putting up a video where I'll be talking and giving reasons why I think the Eagles will win the game. So we'll look at the positives tomorrow. Until then, fly Eagles fly.